Good afternoon. I think we'll get started here. How many are students? Oh, good. Good, good. It's great to have you here. How many people are not a part of the university who came here? Oh, excellent. Welcome. Thanks for coming. My name is Don Goodmanson. I'm the Dean of the Monfort College of Business, and it's a great pleasure for me today to introduce our special guests for this program that we have. And I want to just first of all thank the Entrepreneurship Club. Entrepreneurship Club, raise your hands. Okay, a few of you guys raise your hands. For putting this on, for putting this together. As with many of the programs that we run here on campus, this was really put together by the students, organized by the students, and to a large extent being run by the students today. So for those who came from the outside and paid the $5, that's going to help their funds to do more things in the future. So we appreciate all of that support. Today we're especially pleased to have three guests here that really are in very many ways icons in the business arena, especially in this part of the state. So I'll kind of give you the brief introductions, and then I'll turn it over to them and the rest of the program, I guess. So first of all, Brian Schwartz, who's standing right over here. He's an award-winning author of 50 interviews, Entrepreneurs Thriving in Uncertain Times. After spending over 10 years in sales with IBM and several other startups, he set out in 2008 to interview 50 successful entrepreneurs. In doing so, he discovered new truths as to why he never made the leap from employee to employer, and why many who do are unable to find lasting success. His passion is rooted in the company he started to mentor others using the same framework that he used. Many of these mentees have become authors themselves, and today there are over a dozen 50 interviews titles being produced. He has appeared on NBC, CBS, and the Denver Business Journal. Please join me in welcoming Brian Schwartz. We also have today Jake Jabb. He's the president and CEO of American Furniture Warehouse. He didn't bring the tigers. I was asking him. It's one of the top furniture companies in the U.S. and one of the largest privately held businesses in Colorado. Under Jabb's leadership, the one-store furniture company he purchased in 1975 has grown into a 12-store operation with a remarkable growth trend over the past several years. Jabb attributes his entrepreneurial success to the basic American philosophies of hard work, long hours, self-confidence, the courage to take risks, and the desire to give value and service to every customer. I think that's your business education right there. He believes that you must honestly love what you do and have fun doing it in order to truly be successful. An active community supporter and philanthropist, Jabb gives of his time, talent, and resources to a number of worthwhile nonprofit organizations throughout Colorado. He has been the recipient of many honors and awards, too numerous to mention here. Please join me in welcoming Jake Jabb. And for those who have read the newspaper and been paying any attention to the news today, we are also fortunate here to have Troy McWhinney. And he will give insights into the news right off the press today. He established McWhinney with his brother, Chad, this is Troy McWhinney, established McWhinney with his brother, Chad, and father, Derek, in 1991, and today serves as Executive Vice President and co-founder. McWhinney is a diversified real estate company that creates large-scale, multi-use projects, including the award-winning 3,300-acre Centerra community that we've heard about in the news in Loveland, as well as the 900-plus-acre North Park community in Broomfield. Troy's leadership and attention to detail help guide the company towards its purpose of creating great places for people. Troy's long-term vision helps maintain the delicate balance between development and environment, which positions McWhinney as an evergreen company, one that prospers in all phases of the real estate cycle. Please join me in welcoming Troy McWhinney.
Okay. So, is this loud enough? Yes. I don't have to yell. So I do have a PowerPoint, but I'm definitely not going to use it. I didn't realize that the teachers today use PowerPoints, which tells me that I definitely should not be using them going forward, especially if I'm going to college to speak. So I'm glad I heard that little tidbit. Besides, it really isn't about me. It's about the entrepreneurs that are here. Granted, I went out and interviewed 50 successful entrepreneurs, and it came as a challenge from my wife. I'll tell you that if I had known then what I know now, and that's why I really have this desire to speak to students. So I've been out of school for about 13 years, and I wish I knew some of the things now that, or then, that I know now. And that's kind of what I want to share with you guys a little bit, the perspective I have now. And entrepreneurship is a key way for you to have security and happiness and fulfillment in your life going forward that a lot of people will not get working for other people. And I had searched for fulfillment for many years of my life. I'd find it for a short period of time, usually the first couple of years working for a company, and that's sort of the honeymoon period. You know, you're thrilled, everything's working out well, but then something happens and you get passed up for promotion, you see someone else get the credit for the work that you did, you get a new boss, and I will tell you that your management will shift quite often. And just things change, and guess what? You've changed to a new career or a new job, which is why so many people are jumping from company to company. It's simply because they have not found the fulfillment in whatever reason the company that they want to work for. When I got out of school in 94, 95, the job market wasn't really good. We certainly are not in the situation we're in now, but I did feel compelled to take one of the first jobs that came around, and I was fortunate because a lot of my peers didn't find jobs either. But the challenge for my wife, because I've been in sales for 10 plus years, and I'm very close to the dollar. I know how much money I'm making in these companies. And here's what was happening. For the first 10 years, I continued to see my W-2 go up every year, right? As long as I was making more income year after year, everything was good. I was reaping the rewards of my hard work. Well, a couple years ago, about 4 years ago, for some reason, I had sort of hit a plateau. Now, I was working just as hard. In fact, I was probably making more money for these companies than I'd ever made before because I knew what I was doing, and I was a seasoned sales pro. But I had really hit a ceiling on what I was earning. And here's the problem is when you start making as much as the CEO of the company, they look at that and say, something's wrong here. This is too easy. And why are we paying this guy so much? It's not just me, it's several other people. So starting at IBM, the theme was, essentially they start jacking up your quota. And when they raise your quota, you've got to sell more. And if you don't sell more, you make less money. And that's the way the quota game works. So I was actually working harder than I ever worked in my life, and I was making less money. And that was not the reason I went into sales. I went into sales to make a decent living and not have to work so hard my whole life. So anyway, that happened year after year, and I told my wife, this is it. I'm sick of this. I'm not going to let somebody else dictate what I can earn. I'm quitting my job. I'm going to start my own company. Pretty naive, and Debbie said, I don't think you know what you're getting us into, Brian. You really should think about this, and I want you to talk to some people. In fact, I want you to talk to 50. If you talk to 50 people, you've got my blessing. And she admits about halfway through it that she never thought I was going to go through 50 interviews. That was her whole point of putting that challenge out there, that she would have a reason not to give me her blessing to quit my job, because in her mind that was a more secure path. In her mind, it was more secure. In my mind, it was scary as hell because I saw all these people getting let go, good people. And the problem is you have no control, especially in these large corporations, of tomorrow. You know, the decisions that impact you are made several layers up. So that's really why I went to, I wanted to go down this path of entrepreneurship. What really surprised me was what I discovered from these entrepreneurs was so counter to the perception I had had for so many years, especially being in sales, because you're always trying to get to the top. You know, you always want to meet the president because he's the decision makers, right? You figure you get into the round office and, you know, you're in like Flint. But you know, it's very hard to get to their level because there's many people below them that you essentially get referred to, especially when they find out you're in sales. all the ego that exists in business exists just below the top. Okay, the entrepreneurs don't have any ego. That was a huge surprise. The ego exists with the people who have big titles like VP of marketing, VP of sales, director of, because these people need this title to make themselves feel important. And what comes with that is that I have a bigger title than you, so I must be more important than you. But when I got to the top through this kind of a totally different approach, was that what I really just wanted to have a conversation with these folks. I found out there was no ego at all, and I was really shocked. So there's really two key distinctions that successful entrepreneurs share. One, a consuming passion for what they do. That was above all, and that's nothing new. You've heard that before, right? But I will tell you that the passion that the successful entrepreneurs have it's a consuming passion. It's like an addiction. They can't turn it off. And of course, there's the dark side of having all that passion. It's that not everybody is always tuned into that. But the entrepreneurs, essentially, when they go on vacation, they're more excited at the end of vacation than they are at the beginning, because they're excited to get back to what they were doing. The loved ones that they're with on vacation don't necessarily want to hear that. They want them to be happy to be away from their work. But it's like an addiction, and the thing about why they do what they do is because the job for them didn't exist, so they went out and they created it. And they created this opportunity for them to be able to live their passion day to day. The other distinction, and this was really subtle, and honestly, I've not read this in books, and I didn't see this, and it was so subtle, is that successful entrepreneurs have found an impersonal goal. And what I mean by that is they found a purpose greater than themselves. And I can tell you that when you find a purpose greater than yourself, and you found a consuming passion, that you have the fuel to get you through all the adversity that you're going to face as an entrepreneur, because it's a lot easier to go work for someone else. I've been a full-time entrepreneur since April, and I can tell you it was a lot easier when someone else managed all the headaches, and I just went into work, and at the end of the day and on the weekends, I could essentially turn it off, and I didn't have to worry about things. As an entrepreneur, you're going to work way more. You're going to work, probably 60-plus hours a week in the beginning. So you better love what you do. That's why it's got to be something that's consuming passion. But you also need to find that purpose greater than yourself. If there was an alternate title to my book, it would be "It's Not About the Money." But I don't think a book like that would appeal to a lot of people, because that's so counter to what most of us think about. It's the fact that what they do is for a purpose much greater than the money. Because if you're doing something simply for the money, then it's really about you. I mean, think about it. It's somewhat of a selfish endeavor. The companies I've worked for that I was drawn to for the money, it was all about me. So guess what? When the money stops coming, people are out of there. And if somebody comes and works for you for a paycheck, they're going to leave the moment that bigger paycheck comes around. It was Doug Odell who told me the moment during an interview that he gets a sense that somebody's basically there because they need to pay the bills or they need a paycheck, and that's the primary reason that they're at that interview, he said they're done. He's looking for people that are coming to work for something much greater than the paycheck. Somebody who loves brewing, somebody who loves Odell beer, ideally. It's just, he knows, because the people, again, that he's hired for that need the paycheck are going to leave the moment that bigger paycheck comes around. And a lot of these companies that treat their employees well are going to have a rude awakening when things turn around. And the moment there's better employers out there that they're able to hire these people, they're going to be gone, and these companies are going to be forced to change their thinking. The thing that I wish I'd known when I was where you guys were at was something around envy, jealousy, and just not a good way to look at people who have achieved a lot in their life. Now, I don't say that all of you share that opinion, but maybe it's because I had 3 brothers and it was a very competitive family I grew up in. But if you can change that envy and jealousy into admiration, you will benefit from the person that you maybe have a little jealousy and envy about. You can actually use that jealousy as fuel. And when you admire somebody, which I admired everybody I interviewed, I always came into those interviews with pure admiration for what they do, that I learned a lot, and I was totally open. And probably the best thing about doing this early on was that I had no preconceived notions, I had no biases, and I knew very little. And the problem is when you know too much, you don't listen to much. And I think one of the keys is accepting the fact that you know very little. I mean, you can learn so much from other people if you just except the fact that you really don't know much at all because you have so much to learn. One or two other things I was thinking about on the way down here, I want to make sure I touched on. You're finding your unique identities. One of the most important lessons I learned through this was you emulate to learn, but you innovate to earn. Meaning that none of these entrepreneurs, this is a common thread amongst all entrepreneurs I interviewed, none of them had found true success in their business, and so they had started to innovate and do something really different from what the typical way of doing something was. Michael Gerber says, it's entrepreneurs find the uncommon answer to the common problem. And once you found that, I mean, that is truly the distinction. You'll hear about how Jay Jabs, basically, they repair furniture on site at their stores. Nobody had been doing that in the business. They sent the furniture back to the manufacturers. Well, there's a huge cost associated with that. So when he started repairing the furniture on site, he was doing something that nobody else was doing, and that turned out to be one of his true differentiators, right? And that really turned things around for them, or really allowed them to leave the business, because of course he's got great relationships with his suppliers, because he's not always shipping furniture back to them. But every business that has found great success in some way, shape, or form has innovated. You can emulate others to a certain extent, meaning that you can follow the proven path and the trail that other people have blazed. But at some point, you've got to break off that path and blaze your own trail. And that's what I'm doing now with the publishing business. I have no intention of following the publishers down into the abyss where they're headed. So this is a great opportunity for me to really innovate and do something completely different. And a lot of the entrepreneurs, too, they had very little experience in the field that they're in. And there's almost an advantage to knowing less, because you're going to be thinking differently. You're going to be applying different perspectives. So back to what I had written down was find your unique identity. We're all unique. We have different experiences, and which makes all of us very different. But we are all of the exact same DNA. So what makes us different from the people who have achieved? The fact that you have the same DNA as somebody like Jake. Why he's where he is today is because he has made different decisions along the way. But why has he made different decisions? It's because he possesses different beliefs. Okay? If you step back and look at your decisions, you'll find that behind those decisions are your beliefs. So if the beliefs that you possess are not putting you where you want to be in life, then you need to adopt new ones. If you're not making decisions that are putting you where you want to be in life, step back and really expand your beliefs. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any beliefs, but I ask you, did you choose your beliefs? You didn't. You were born into your beliefs. You didn't choose the family that you were born into. But you know what? For the first 7-10 years of your life, those beliefs were essentially instilled into you. You had no choice. You're not developed enough to know that, hey, this isn't the way I want to be. But as you move through life, you realize, these aren't my beliefs, these are my parents' beliefs. And the world has really changed since my parents brought me up. So you really just need to be open and realize that beliefs can be very powerful, but they can also be very dangerous. So it's your point in life, I tell you, be very careful of who you emulate and whose beliefs you adopt. And if you pick people that you admire, and you pick people who have achieved the things that you want in life, adopt their beliefs. And how do you do that? You surround yourself with them. That's the best way to probably describe the 50 interviews. It's all about what's occurring for all the other authors is that they're having an opportunity to surround themselves with the people they admire. So, beliefs are very powerful. So that's about it. Again, it's not about me. We'll have some times for Q&A that you can ask all three of these, but at this point, I think what I'll do is start with Troy and have him tell you a little bit about himself and McWhinney, and then we'll move over to Jake. So why don't you share a little bit, Troy?
Great. I'm Troy McWhinney. I'm 35 years old, married with 3 children. Started in business. First business we had was stealing golf balls out of the golf course lake and selling them on the weekends to the golfers who lost the golf balls. And then from there, we actually got involved in a dirt business and grew up in Southern California. there was a lot of construction projects that had extra dirt. If they built a parking structure or had to level off a mountain, they had extra dirt. And then there was a lot of projects that needed extra dirt. And we would actually drive around Orange County. This is actually before we had cars. We were, I think I was 13 or 14 when this was happening. But a family friend of ours was in the dirt business, and you could actually make a lot of money brokering dirt. If you found someone who needed dirt, you could charge them a lot of money to bring dirt to their site. If you found someone that had a lot of extra dirt, you could charge them to take the dirt off their site. And literally, we even now in some of our projects, and I'm sure Jake has it too on his sites, you can spend a couple $100,000 moving dirt. And we would actually find someone who's moving dirt or has excess dirt, and we would say, what are you going to charge, or what are you going to spend to haul that dirt off? And he said, no, the budget's $25,000. And we would know people who are starting projects who need dirt. And we would go sit down with them and say, what is it that you're going to spend to bring in dirt? And he'd say $25,000. And we would go to the first guy and say, can we have or instead of you paying $25,000, why don't you pay us $10,000? And he said, great, that sounds like a good deal. We would go to the guy who needs the dirt, who's going to pay $25,000, and we say, why don't you pay us $10,000 and we'll bring you in the dirt. And so we could make $20,000 on a dirt deal just by brokering dirt. And one of the things you'll hear is there's plenty of ways to make money and start businesses without having to need startup capital. From there, we went into selling strawberries. We started to meet a lot of farmers and ranchers. And I remember the first strawberry stand we had, when I say we, my brother Chad and I, we sat outside on a busy road, and we had my grandmother helped us, had a pickup truck, and a family friend of ours had a strawberry field. We didn't have money to buy the strawberries, so we asked them if we could get strawberries in the morning on Saturday, and we would pay them back on Sunday morning with the profits. And the first day I made $76, and my brother Chad made $76. This is 20 years ago, and I was making $20 a week doing chores around the house. And on Saturday selling strawberries, I made $76 and he made $76. Told mom and dad we're never doing chores again. And then a light bulb went off that if that one stand could make $150 a day on Saturday in profits, Chad and I agreed, why doesn't one person take this stand and another person go a couple miles away and start another stand, and we both made $150. And then we started to realize our friends wanted jobs. Back then, 20 years ago, I think minimum wage was $3 or $4 an hour, maybe $5 an hour. And they could get jobs at fast food restaurants making $40 a day, or they could go work for us and make $50 a day. So we would actually have our friends meet us at the strawberry field and load up their trucks and tell them to go sell strawberries. They would come back at the end of the day with $150 of profit. We would give them $50, and they'd give us $100. And we grew that business. At one time, I think we had about 40 different strawberry stands. And I think I remember being 16, 17 years old, making a lot of money. And one year, we actually did $1 million in sales. And the sales season was January through June. And all of it was cash. Our busiest weekend was Easter weekend. And we would come home at night, and we'd have these 40 people come in. And by then, we started to pick better locations, professional stands, more and more strawberries. The drivers would pick up the strawberries in the morning at 6 a.m. They started picking them at 4 or 5 in the morning, as soon as the light would come up, and they couldn't pick them fast enough, so they would all take enough inventory to get started, and then we would load a big semi truck, refrigerated truck, and drive around a couple hours later, drop off some more, get back over to the field, buy some more strawberries, drop them off, and then those stands started making $200, $300, $400 profit per day. And I remember being 16, 17 years old on Sunday night after a busy weekend for Easter, would be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, having I think $100,000 or $200,000 of cash sitting in ones and fives and tens on our dinner table, and then going into the bank Monday morning before school started, dropping off like $100,000 of cash. That business was great in Orange County. Then Orange County actually went into bankruptcy. The county had a major recession. This is after the Persian Gulf War in, I think, 1991 or 1992. And we had got to know a lot of real estate developers through this process. And we started to realize that whatever product we had left over at the end of the day, as far as strawberries, was going down in value. If we didn't sell it that day as a fresh strawberry, it went down in value. The next day, we would have to sell it at a discount. And then by the third day, we were selling it to the restaurants for basically what we paid for it, just trying to recoup our losses. And so we realized the difference between a depreciating asset and a appreciating asset. Real estate in general tends to appreciate in value. People who bought homes 20 years ago, their homes are probably worth more now than they were 20 years ago, versus this pen. This pen will be worthless in a week or two. This bottle, worthless in a week or two. So we started to see real estate is where we wanted to get involved. Orange County was in bankruptcy in early 1990s, and I remember reading this article. It's Time magazine, and it says, "Boom time in the Rockies. More jobs and fewer hassles have Americans heading to the hills." This is in 1993, and my brother Chad and I said, let's move to Colorado, and we got here in 1994. And really, because the strawberry business fell apart. When there was a recession, nobody wanted to buy fresh strawberries. We went from making a lot of money to losing a lot of money, because we had a lot of leases on stands. Our stands weren't just roadside stands. We actually had to pay monthly rent to landlords. We had employees, we had overhead, we had insurance, we had trucks, etc. So as great as the business was, we actually ended up losing money in a few years because of the recession in California in the early 1990s. Very thankful I saw a recession happen back in 1991 or 1992. I graduated high school in 1992 and moved out here. Didn't know what we were going to do. Ended up optioning a 500-acre farm from our father. My grandmother had passed away. The family actually owned a 500-acre farm in Loveland. And when somebody passes away, the IRS says you owe us inheritance taxes. My dad had to pay inheritance taxes to the IRS on a farm that did not produce any revenue. And so he actually sold the farm to us. We didn't have the funds to buy the farm, so he gave us a 10-year note. My father carried back a 10-year note. Took us 10 years to pay him off. We bought the farm for market rate. He could have. We actually bought the farm for what the IRS had appraised it for, and sat down with the city of Loveland. This is going on in 1994, and said, we own a great piece of land at the intersection of I-25 and Highway 34, but we have no money. And just then, Colorado was coming out of the recession of the 1980s, and things were very poor here in the 1980s after the oil bust. And quite a bit of luck there, being able to get a piece of property at the intersection of I-25 and 34, coming out of a recession, and the factory store owner approached us after we had optioned the property from our father and said, I want to buy 40 acres of your 500 acres. And so we were able to sell him 40 acres of land for almost the cost that we bought the 500 acres of land from, and start paying off debt, but we didn't have any money to put in the roads or utilities. So we sat down with the city of Loveland and said it's going to cost almost $1 million to bring roads and utilities for the factory stores to open. However, the factory stores were going to pay $1 million a year in sales tax to the city of Loveland. So we told the city of Loveland we would sell our 40 acres of land, but they needed to assist with the infrastructure. City of Loveland said, sounds like a good deal. If we pay $1 million in roads and utilities and we get $1 million a year in sales tax, sounds like a pretty good deal. And those numbers may not be exact, but we're going on almost 20 years ago. But from then, the partnership with the city of Loveland was born. And we started off with 500 acres of land. A family friend of ours from California came out and said, if I were you guys, before you get started, I would go try and buy as much land as you can in the area. So we went out and purchased 16 farms, didn't have the money to purchase them, sat down with all 16 different landowners and said, what do you want for your farm? And for example, somebody would say, I want $200,000 for my farm. And again, we were calling them just after the recession had ended. Nobody had really called them about their farm. Nobody was buying farm. That farmer may have been making $10,000 a year farming his property. And we said, we don't have $200,000 to buy your farm now. Would you give us 3 years to buy your farm, and we'll pay you $250,000 at the end of 3 years. And in return for that option, we'll give you a $5,000 payment or a $10,000 payment. And the farmers would actually say, you're going to pay me $10,000 to option my property, which I think is worth $200,000, for $250,000. Sure. And so what we saw was commercial development opportunity. What they saw was a farm that generated very little income. And we did that because our perceptual map, coming from Southern California, talking to friends and family, and so really trying to tie up a lot of property with very little capital, and a lot of it is luck. We timed probably the best real estate boom that this country has seen from 1990 to 2005. And you guys probably have all heard of the stories about the homes being built and all the big bubble that was there. We were lucky enough not to buy a lot of property at the bubble. The bubble was really 2001, 2005 time frame. Most of the property we bought was in the mid to early 1990s. Most of you guys have probably seen the article about the Centera shops going into foreclosure. It's actually great that it came out because we've known about it for a year now, and it's great that we can actually talk about it. A lot of people read the article and think Centera is going bankrupt, Centera is going under. The company is made up of 120 different LLCs. Every project we do is a separate operating LLC. Granted, that is one of the 120 LLCs. It's a very large one. But what people should know is the loan on that is non-recourse, which means if the property goes upside down, you can give the keys back to the bank, and they don't come after you personally. We pay extra in interest, so the bank actually gets a higher interest rate for those types of loans. So the banks tend to make money, but that's the ways that we are able to protect ourselves, so you don't put all of your eggs in one basket. The Promenade Shops is actually doing very well. The rent paid by the tenants is far greater than the bank payment every month. What happens is there's seven banks involved in the construction loan. There was a 5-year construction loan that we obtained. I think it may have been a 3 or 4 year construction loan, but we obtained the loan back in 2005. That loan came due back in January of this year. The 7 banks, you guys have all been hearing what's happening with the banks, said we want our money back. And it may not have been all 7 of them, but several of the banks said we want our money back. We don't want to extend the loan. And we went to try and refinance the loan with other banks right now. Getting large shopping center loans right now is virtually impossible. And the value of the center had actually come down from it being built in 2005. I think it opened in 2005, 2006 at the peak of the market. So the current value of the center, if we were to sell it now, is worth less than the loan. Sat down with the banks and said, the loan's non-recourse. Why don't you guys write the loan down? And the 7 banks themselves could not agree amongst themselves to write down the loan, and they take the loss. That's one of the risks the banks take for charging us a higher interest rate. So the 7 banks themselves could not agree, and we basically said, if you can't agree, we're not going to put in more money to pay down the loan. Here are the keys. So that process has been in works now for about the last 10 months. They finally filed the papers with Larimer County last week, and have hit the papers yesterday. So a lot of people think Centera is going bankrupt. No, one of the 120 assets is basically has no value, and the ownership will be going from us to the bank group. And then our plan is to sit down with the bank group and say, when you go to sell it, we will probably be one of the people who try and buy it back at the current market value. So that's kind of a summary of what's going on there, and I'm sure we'll get into questions and answers later on. The company has about 55 employees. At the peak of the market, we were about 95. We've seen real estate values drop quite a bit. We were lucky enough to sell some real estate back in 2007, at prices that were a lot higher than what we could get today. So we've seen property values drop, which is very painful, but we've also seen the best time to buy. If you recall me talking about our best buys were in the early 1990s, after Colorado had just finished the major recession of the 80s. That's happening all over again. There's going to be the best time to buy again is starting now, and will probably last the next 2 to 3 years. We all saw Warren Buffett go out and buy quite a bit of companies this past year. And he was on CNBC last week with Bill Gates, I think, and said, there may not be another better time or any of us will never see another better time to buy property in our lifetime. So I saw it 20 years ago. We're seeing it now, and that's our story.
Even to start a company right now, there's never been a better time because resources have never been as cheap as they are now, whether it be marketing people, advertising. I mean, I've got somebody working for me for $20 an hour who's probably an $80 an hour type person. And the only reason I have her is because there's no jobs out there for her. So now's the time to really capture these great resources, whether it be people. I think, Jake, you have some stories about advertising. Essentially, now has never been, he's paying less for his ads today than he was last year. And I'll hand it over for Jake, and I want you to stand up, Jake, when you do yours, because I think we're going to lose a lot if you're stuck behind that table.
Okay.
You're a larger-than-life character. You can use that mic, or you can use this one. When I said it's not about the money, I want to clarify something that I learned. It is completely about the money, because the more money you make, the more people you're reaching, and the bigger impact you're having on the world. So don't take it to I'd be honest with you, I was a little misguided by this in the beginning. The money helps keep your business going so that you can do more and make a bigger impact on the world. So it is completely about the money. If you're a multi-million-dollar company, you're reaching far more people than if you're a $100,000 company. So with that, I'll turn it over to larger-than-life character, Jake today.
Thank you. About the money, if you go into business just to make money, it's probably not going to work. I think the love of money is, the Bible says, the root of all evil. Money is a byproduct of giving value and service to the customer and going into business. I was never in business to make money. It really wasn't, believe that or not. It just grew by itself by the seat of the pants, and I'm going to tell you that story right now. Anyway, I was born and raised in Lodge Grass, Montana. Anybody know where Lodge Grass, Montana is? It's a small town. To show you how small it was, I was born November 23rd, and I won the first Baby of the Year contest. We had a sign over in the town that slow down and zoom speed, both on the same sign. I went back to my class reunion last summer, and I was the only one there. Trying to figure out how to send me the invitation. Anyway, Lodge Grass is in the middle of the Croatian Reservation in southern Montana. I was one of 9 kids. My parents were immigrants. My dad was born and raised in Poland. My mother was from Russia. And like most immigrants, you come over here with a shirt on your back. So we grew up very poor. We didn't know we were poor. Actually, on my mother's side of the family, they came to Greeley when they first came to the States and worked sugar beets. They were sugar beet farmers, and when we were in farming in Montana, we were actually sharecroppers on the Croatian Reservation. But one thing my dad taught us, he wanted us all to get an education. He only went to the 2nd grade. My mother went to the 7th grade. And he encouraged us to go to college. So we all went to college. I went to Montana State College in Bozeman. My dad gave us $50. In those days, that's what it cost to register in Montana State, was $50. What's it cost now? And then you were on your own. And we were musicians. We were family musicians. And my brother and I formed a band, and we started playing music. And actually made money going to college playing music. I ended up teaching guitar in a music store in downtown Bozeman. This was in the 50s, and in those days, everybody wanted to play the guitar. Folk music was very popular. Elvis was starting to come on. And I actually made money teaching guitar. And that was probably my entree from farm to business. I found there was something else in life besides farming. Anyway, the Korean War was on, and my dad encouraged us to take ROTC. So actually, all my brothers and I, we took ROTC and came out of college with a commission in the Air Force, which isn't bad. Sometimes that little extra effort you put forward pays off. So that little extra effort of taking ROTC, which marching on weekends and doing a little extra work, got me a commission in the Air Force. Spent 2 years active service, 6 years in reserve. A great experience for a 21-year-old second lieutenant in the Air Force. I ended up filling out an application for top secret clearance and landed up in French Morocco in northern Africa as a security courier, and I handled all the top secret mail for the whole continent of Africa. I got flying pay and got travel in 24 different countries. A great experience for a 21-year-old second lieutenant in the Air Force, delivering all the top secret mail for the whole continent of Africa. Anyway, I played music actually when I was in the service, got out of the service, and played music for a while out of Nashville. Toured with Marty Robbins. Anybody Do you remember Marty Robbins? Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl. If I could have sang like Marty Robbins, I'd still be playing music. But I couldn't sing like Marty Robbins. And so I went back to Bozeman and opened a guitar studio and started teaching guitar. And that was in the 50s. Everyone wanted to play the guitar, and it was cash. Just giving guitar lessons was all cash, not bad. Huh? And I ended up buying music in downtown Bozeman. There was an old-time music store down there, and there was a recession going on. And I ended up buying half interest in this music store for $1,500. I saved up $1,500, and I was half owner of this music store in downtown Bozeman, Montana. My partner, an older gentleman, he didn't like country western music, hated rock and roll, and the thing that was driving my business, I told my boss I never had a music store, was rock and roll music and country western, and he didn't like that, so we weren't getting along very well. And I had an agreement with him at the end of the first year I'd buy his half interest out for $3,000. Now businesses just take money, so I didn't have the $3,000, so I went to the bank and I said, I need $2,000 to buy my partner out, and I have this agreement to buy him out. And they said, let's see, what are your assets? I graduated in agriculture in college. I didn't know what assets were. Do you have a financial statement? I didn't know what a financial statement was. So we're sitting in front of this banker making out a financial statement. What's your liabilities? How much inventory do you have? What's your age on your receivables? All that stuff. And I could tell he wasn't going to lend me that $3,000 because he was asking too many questions. And I said, well, by the way, I have 30 head of cattle back on the ranch at home. So all his eyes lit up because bankers in Montana look at cattle on the ranch as assets. And he took the 30 head of cattle as assets and mortgaged them for the $3,000 loan. So I said, I better go back and home and check this out. And the story was this: when we graduated from high school, we each got a heifer calf. And with my brothers and I, so I thought I had these cattle, and I explained, I said, you know, heifer calves have calves, and this is 8 years later, so now I have 30 head of cattle. I went back and checked on it, come to find out when I left home at 16 years old, my heifer calf had left with me, and I didn't have the 30 head of cattle. But it worked out. Of course, they paid the bank back, and I paid my partner off. And that was a good decision. A lot of times partnerships don't work depending on what you are. Anyway, I had the music store, grew the music store, like I say, into a good-sized business. Went to open a store in Billings, Montana, which was a bigger market. And the trouble with the music business is it was franchised, and you couldn't take your franchise with you. You had to have Gibson guitars, Fender guitars. Any musicians in the crowd here? There's about Fender guitars and Gibson guitars and con band instruments and one clarinets. And if you didn't have the good franchises, you really couldn't be successful. So when I went to open the store in Billings, I said, Jake, you can't take these franchises with you. So what I did, I lost interest in the music business. I could always have a big music store in Bozeman, but if I went to open a bigger store, I couldn't take my franchise. So I decided to get out of the music business. So I ended up having 3 stores at that time. I had one in Livingston, one in Billings, and one in Bozeman. I sold all 3 stores as going businesses and had some income coming in, and I retired. I was 30 years old. Now, I didn't have enough money to retire on the beach in Hawaii, but I had enough money where I could kind of look for opportunities. And there was I was a big Motorola dealer when I had the music store, and the guy who owned the Motorola distributing company in Billings said, I have a brother-in-law in Great Falls, Jake, who's struggling. You were always a good promoter when you had your music store. And yeah, talk about advertising. Back in those days, it was easy to advertise. In Bozeman, we didn't have TV then. There were 3 radio stations. The newspaper was a weekly paper. And I used to do things like run 50 radio spots on a radio station. And when I did that, they knew we had something going on in the music store. Well, today, man, it's tough to advertise. It's changed now. Newspaper readership is going in the tank. How many of you are taking the newspaper? Say, really Tribune? You see what I mean? Out of this group right here, there's only probably about 5% that actually take the paper. So nobody's taking the paper. TV is so fragmented anymore. I bought this new house and I got Comcast in there, and there's 950 channels. Now, they're not all good channels. It's so fragmented to buy, so it's tough to it's tougher to advertise today than it's ever been because of the fragmentation of advertising. So anyway, I started running sales. I ran the sales for him. We were very successful. I started getting phone calls. There was a recession going on at that time, and people asked me to run the sales for them. And so I started running sales. It was fun for me. It was kind of a hobby. I was learning about business because I don't have a business background at all. My parents, like I say, were farmers in Montana, and I graduated in agriculture. So my really experience in business was running sales. And when I was running sales for all these different stores, actually I ran a couple of sales here in Greeley. This was back in the 60s, and Colorado, and Wyoming, and Montana, and branched out into Arizona and different places like that. And there was a lot of reasons that these businesses were failing. But one thing that always seemed to surface, that if you didn't have that gut feeling to be the best operation in the marketplace, somebody else would come in and take you out. And that's always been my goal. I saw that. Some people, their business was failing, they were not working hard enough, they were gambling too much, they were taking too many coffee breaks, they had too much family in business. If you didn't have that desire to be the best operator, so that's always been my motto, and when I give speeches, say, is that if you have a desire to be the best operation in the marketplace, you'll probably be successful. And so when I ran sales, that's how I got to Colorado. In 1968, I was running a sale downtown on Santa Fe and South Santa Fe Drive for a place called Mediterranean Shop, and he was going out of business because his business was good, and he didn't want to take care of the problems with furniture and returns and all that stuff, and cutting into his golf game. What I saw was an opportunity for demand for Mediterranean furniture. And I have a list of things that, by the way, I'm willing to share a lot of these things if you want to come up after we're done. But on my list to be successful, number one, is find a demand and fulfill that demand. And that's really how simple the free enterprise system was. I was successful in the music business because of the demand for guitar studios. This was in the 50s, I was playing guitar. In 1968, there was a demand for Mediterranean furniture. It was a hot item. So for 5 years, I had a store. I opened up there, it went real well. Opened a store in Pueblo, Colorado Springs, or Village, Montana. I ended up buying a furniture factory in Montana to make Mediterranean furniture. And I love Mediterranean furniture. Anybody here remember Mediterranean furniture? A couple of these older guys. I thought Mediterranean furniture would last. Mediterranean furniture lasted 5 years. 5 years later, it was going down the cliff. And I was going with it. And I don't believe in bankruptcies. I believe everybody should be responsible for their own actions. And so I bailed out. I sold my stores before I went broke. And actually landed up with some money. That's the first time I actually had some spending money. Because businesses normally take money. You don't land up with a lot of cash in your pocket. You're always putting money back into business. Moved back to Montana, ran my factory. I drove my factory. And in 1975, there was a huge recession here in Colorado, 74, 75. Big real estate depression here. You weren't here then, I guess, yet, but it was a lot of similar to what's going on now. It was worse, I think, in real estate than it is now. And I was selling down on the Furniture Row. I was selling Mangurians who built that big building down there, and from my factory in Montana. And a lot of furniture stores in Colorado were going out of business, including the old American Furniture Company went out of business, Mangurians, and so forth. And what I saw was an opportunity, maybe for a farm kid from Montana to come down and buy the old American Furniture Company. So I did that. I came down and negotiated with them, and they had it was on their books at $1.5 million, and they were looking for a sucker to buy their assets. And so I had $80,000 cash. I gave $80,000 cash for $1.5 million worth of assets. I figured I made $1 million that day because I had use for those assets. I had use for the trucks, the warehouse racks, and in those days it was typewriters. Anybody remember typewriters? How about adding machines? They had $1.5 million worth of assets that I bought for $80,000. And reowned that as American Furniture Warehouse in 1975. And first year we did was $8 million, and we grew the business $15 million. Landed up in the middle 80s with 9 stores. And now that was a recession. That recession in the 80s was worse than this recession. Some of you guys remember that one. People were leaving Colorado. The population of Colorado was actually going down in the 80s. That was a big oil recession. And we barely survived. What I did is I got on TV and I said, things are tough in Colorado right now. And I think everybody said, oh, you got that right, Diddy. And they were agreeing with me. And I said, I'm going to close 5 of my stores and sell my furniture at half price until my inventory reaches a proper level. And we did. We bought furniture actually at cost. And what I learned then is if you sell furniture cheap, people show up. That's the lesson I learned then. That's one reason we're doing so good right now. We just keep selling furniture cheap. People keep showing up. So anyway, rocket science, right? We sell furniture cheap. It's pretty. So anyway, I closed up 5 of my stores, kept my 4 best stores, and they were all here in Colorado. At that time, I had stores in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and kept my 4 Colorado stores consolidated here. And really started over, actually. So we really were really broke with the only 2 years I ever lost money was 84 and 85. And it's very frustrating. You get these times when things just don't go good and whatever you do doesn't work. Ever been there and done that? Run your best ads, doesn't work. I always thought I was a great advertiser. Ran my best ads, didn't work. Waved my magic wand, nothing happened. And anyway, we survived the recession and business started going like this. And kind of the rest is history. Real quickly, we outgrew that facility on Furniture Row there. We started doing in the millions of dollars, $20, $30 million a year, and ran out of space. We opened the Thornton store in 1991. The first year I owned the Thornton store, we had a $50 million increase that first year because we had the warehousing and the facility to take care of business. And then we opened stores. I only open stores as the demand dictates. I don't own stores just to be opening stores. Whenever we outgrew a building, and then people said, hey, open a store here, and so forth. So now, anyway, we have 12 stores throughout Colorado, and we probably pretty much dominate the furniture business in Colorado. Thank you.
I don't think this is really working yet. The one common thread amongst all these entrepreneurs, we heard a little bit with Jay, is that they failed often, and they had failures. And I would say that I wish I had known this when I was where you guys are. Fail early and fail often, and fail before it really hurts. Here's the problem, people. When you get to be almost 40, you build up a pretty decent lifestyle, especially if you've been making 6 figures in sales. They sort of condition you to expect the nice vacations, the nice cars, the nice homes. You've created a burn rate that is very hard. That you're trapped in a life of servitude. Guess what? The employers love that. You have to come work for them. And it's very hard for people in my age, with the kind of lifestyle we built up, to quit and start doing something you love. But if you do it when you're young and early, before you have this burn rate, and never let your burn rate get very high. One thing I can tell you guys, have you ever heard of the cash flow game by Robert Kiyosaki? Play that. I wish I had played that when I was in college. My wife and I just played that for the first time a few weeks ago. And it was through an interview that I found out about it. But it will give you a whole different perspective on the world of finances. And that is really the most important thing, because what you enjoy doing when you get out of college for the first couple of years, don't expect that you're going to continue enjoying doing that for the next 10 years because you think, well, I'm getting better at this, so I'll keep earning more and more income. Very few people are going to be happy in the same career choice or even the major that they chose. When they get out in the real world, they find out, this isn't what I thought it was. So you want to have that flexibility to change careers and do something different. But again, if you create this burn rate, which again is your total spend of what you spend every month, and you don't build up some good cash flow like you learned to do in that game, you're going to be somewhat trapped. So those are a couple things I wanted to mention that Jake reminded me of in his talk. So I do have questions for these guys, but you know what? I'd much rather hear the questions from you and actually let you ask them and me as well any questions that you have. If you don't, I have some questions prepared. So maybe we just at this point open it up for some questions. No?
So, Jake, how many recessions have you been through since being in business?
How many recessions? I think this is my 7th. Yeah, some are milder than others, but the real deep ones, as I remember, was in the 50s when I bought this music store for $1,500. The 74, 75 recession here in Colorado was huge, and the 80s recession. But there was a couple other milder recessions along the way. It's either my 6th or 7th, something like that.
Good question.
One thing on that, my first recession, I was in high school, and I heard about it, saw it in the papers, read about it, but it didn't affect me as a high schooler. Came out here, had the recession after 9/11, and we saw it happen, but we didn't participate in the upside, didn't prosper in the recovery. This is my 3rd recession, and I think I'm starting to get smarter that there's so much opportunity in a recession. We felt the peak of the market back in 2005. We sold some stuff in 06, 07. I'm hopeful now that my 4th recession, we will be able to time it a little bit better than the first 3. But a lot of people are scared of recessions. If you know they're coming and you can expect them, you'll do much better than someone else.
I agree. I've really done best in recessionary periods. When I look back, for music store, buying America in '74, big recession, I stole it. Particularly in real estate. I tell you, right now, there's deals out there in real estate. Just real estate is, like say, actually you can buy something cheaper and you can build it. Yep. So don't look at recessions through your nose, because there's opportunities out there in recessions.
I have one more comment on the cash flow burn. That is so important. My advice to you all, as you start buying a house or cars, most people buy the most expensive house they can afford. They'll go sit down with their mortgage broker and say, what's the most I can afford? And that's the house they buy. When you buy houses and you buy cars, spend the least amount of money that will make you happy. So that will reduce your cash flow burn. And when times get tough, you won't have that debt burden that other people have.
And one of my favorite stories, so I interviewed Kim Jordan from New Belgium, and she was definitely one of my favorite interviews. I ran into her at the airport about 2 weeks after our interview. But it was in the last place I would ever expect to see her, on the Pikes Peak shuttle. That's the $5 lot. I said, Kim, you run a multi-million-dollar company. What are you doing on this bus? And she said, Brian, it never even occurred to me to park anywhere else. Her and Jeff for 2 years were scraping by as they were building New Belgium. They were working 15-hour days, she said. And so where New Belgium is today, but you never forget that, right? That's that belief and the mindset that you have is essential, because none of these entrepreneurs live lavish lifestyles. A great Yancey at Yancey's Food, I watched him walk out to his Ford Explorer. I'm like, what is this? This is not what I would have expected, because we just have a different perception until you see it.
I heard someone say over the weekend that Americans have finally stopped spending money they don't have to buy stuff they don't need to impress people they don't like.
I've never made a car payment. I saved enough money going to college, paid $600 for a '49 Plymouth, and never bought another car until I could pay cash. Never made a house payment. I traded my Livingston store equity in it for a house in Billings, Montana, $17,000. Never bought another house until I could pay cash for it. Never made a credit card payment on interest. Now just think of the money that I've saved by never making a car payment, never making a house payment, and all that money I could save and put back in my business.
The biggest challenge is, though, the way our society works with marketing, it's all driven around you expecting you should have more than you can afford. It's all driven by these lavish lifestyles, these Lexus cars, and so keep in mind the odds are against you to think like this. The marketers are driven and pay a lot of money so that they force you to think a different way. I mean, it's just, the odds are stacked. So another question.
My question has to do with partnerships. Troy, you said you've been working with your brother since forever, and I would imagine that you've had a couple partnerships as well, Jake. But I guess my question is, do you think it's easier or harder to work with family members? And would you recommend a partnership if you can do it by yourself?
I think it's extremely hard. I'm fortunate my brother's my best friend. We have a lot of partnerships, very few family members. We've had some family disputes, attorneys involved with families. Probably suggest you do it without if you can. A lot of times you need something from another partner.
That was a common thread that most people advise me not to get a partner. I hate to say it. The problem with partnerships is that you both go into this with all this enthusiasm, right? You're both working 10, 15-hour days. At some point, one of the two of you is going to start to throttle back, right? Because you can't sustain it. Well, the first one who does that, the other one's going to look at him and say, what the hell are you doing? Why am I working so hard? And guess what? That's just like in marriage. The moment one of them feels like, anyway.
I saw my father owned 20% of a business, and he was the CEO, and I was in high school, and he got fired one day. The other 80% said, you're no longer CEO, and he had been there for 15 years, lost his job, lost his income. And it's also very, very, you have to be very cautious not to be a minority partner. So if you are a partner, try and be the majority partner if you can.
But in college, where you guys are at right now, I know Derek's got a partner, and Nick's got a partner, Nick Tate, who's an entrepreneur at CSU. It's essential when I think it's very valuable. You're in a neat opportunity. Just know that at some point, you guys are going to probably go separate ways. So it's almost like having a prenuptial.
We have those myself.
Yeah, there you go. All right, another question.
Troy and Jake, could you both talk a little bit about the financial situation we're in today? For example, the SBA is offering banks 100% guaranteed loans, and yet the banks are still not loaning businesses money. Could you give some insight about how this is going to get corrected?
Yeah, the reason the banks won't lend money today is they're afraid that you're going to lose your job. Right now, people are still losing their jobs. Although you might be worth something and have some equity in a house or something, but if you don't have a job, you'll end up can't make your house payments. So the banks are really reluctant to, and right now commercial real estate is really, really tough right now. It's going down the tank. And that's why banks won't lend money. They're afraid that they're not going to get paid back on their loans. Eventually, it'll all flush through. The first thing that has to happen is all those empty houses and the overbuilt of houses, that has to flush through the system. In other words, we need, population growth, and once all those houses are taken up, and then they'll start building new houses. But it'll be a while. It's not an easy situation. The way to avoid all of that, of course, is like I did. I have no debt. We pay cash for all our buildings. We pay cash for inventory, pay cash for our trucks. And if you don't, just think about it, if you don't have a loan on your house, nobody can foreclose on you or on your building. So, we're safe and by not having any debt. But at the same time, it's going to be a while before I think banks loosen up and are willing to loan money on houses or commercial property.
What banks are telling us right now is the feds are saying your bank is, let's say, this big. You can only have a certain percentage of it in commercial real estate. And they're sitting down with those banks saying you already exceed that percentage with your current loans. So if a wealthy gentleman walks in and said, I would like a commercial real estate loan, they say, I'm sorry, because we're out of compliance with the feds. It has nothing to do with you, borrower. We're out of compliance with the feds, and if we don't get in compliance, their insurance rates go up and the feds put on more penalties. So they say it has nothing to do with the borrower or even the property they're trying to finance. They're on the feds watch list, and they need to shrink their total business in commercial real estate.
Another question, yes.
This is for both of you. So what would you attribute your networking experiences, and what would you say were the most valuable that you guys had?
I didn't hear it, did you?
Networking.
How valuable has networking been in their
And
careers?
how would you attribute that? How would you say that it created value to what you guys both did?
For me, it's extremely important, especially when I was young and single, didn't have kids. I literally every night, I would go to city council meetings I mean, that's what I do on a Tuesday night. My friends were out watching, the sports games at the sports bars, and I'd go down to the city council meeting just to meet council members, meet people who were in the city, the real estate, have lunches with. I'm just networking. I'm a sponge for knowledge. The sponge I have is for business and finance. It's not about sports and stuff like that, music. It's more about business. So as much as I can do networking, it was huge. Now that I'm married, have kids, it's challenging to get out in the afternoons and nights and stuff like that. But it has been extremely important.
In sales, it's really important. I tell all my sales, one reason I wore the shirt that says American Furniture Warehouse Retail of the Year 2000 is I encourage all my employees to wear the shirts to where they go to the grocery store, and it's amazing how often they come back with lists. Join clubs. Most charities are good to socialize. A lot of these groups are actually networking groups. They buy from each other. So particularly if you're in sales, networking is very important. As an independent businessman, what you have to do is build relationships. You have to build a relationship with factories that trust you, that you're honest with them, you don't give them chargebacks and debit memos. I think that's when we've been successful is I've always preached to be extremely honest. Because today the consumer, everybody's just turned off with lies today. And you just read the Ponzi schemes and stuff, I think hopefully you young people all understand if you got to be really honest. If you're really honest, it comes back to you. You don't have to watch your backside, and people will trust you, and they'll buy from you because they trust you.
We have the saying in our business, Ford, write this down, Ford, F-O-R-D. And as you talk to people, focus on their family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Don't talk about yourself. Ask them those four things. Most people, when you talk about their family, occupation, recreation, dreams, they don't take you as offensive. That's a way to build relationships. Ask them what their passions are, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. And surround yourself by people you admire. How much of you think that you were surrounding yourself at a young age with all these business people shifted the way you maybe see the world, or at least what you noticed, and thus prepared you for the opportunity that occurred when you came to Colorado? Oh,
it's huge. I remember basically studying business, reading the Wall Street Journal in high school, and just understanding how, I think someone recently said it's called business acumen. If you research, it's kind of just understanding how business works. And I would say it probably took me 15 years, really, when I started, maybe 10 years, from age 15 to 25. But once I learned business, all business kind of works the same. You got to fill a need and provide a good service. And
there you go. Another question. Yes, I can.
I guess my question is, there's so many opportunities out there, whether it's within your industry or outside the industry. How do you evaluate and what kind of stuff you look at to determine what's a good opportunity and want to go after, and what's an opportunity that maybe you don't want to go after?
So how do you pick your ideas? Because as an entrepreneur, I will tell you that that's the biggest challenge I face every day. As an employee, you're pretty much told what to do. While you think you always have too much to do as an employee, you're still working in this confined space, whether it be sales, marketing, customer service. But as an entrepreneur, it's all open. There's no end in sight. So that's an awesome question. And that actually is one of the areas that challenges me the most as a new entrepreneur. So how do you pick the ideas to pursue? Because there's an opportunity cost in everything, right?
Yeah, for me, we talked early on. We talked about it's not all about the money. When I first started, it was. I wanted to make money, and after the money started to come in, it wasn't exciting. And I still make passive investments. I'll have a friend of mine call me and say, "Hey, I've got this business idea," and I'm pretty quick to understand whether or not it's a low risk venture or high risk venture. How much is at stake? What's the returns? And some of those are extremely profitable, but they don't bring any pleasure at all, other than making money, but there's no emotional tie to those. It's really, since then it's become, how do you do business now that's win-win? How do you do a transaction where the person that is paying you money is very happy to pay you the money? And so it's just, when I evaluate businesses, right now it's really, how do you minimize risk, and what is the potential return, and is it scalable? if somebody says, let's do one thing and then we'll never do another thing, it's not worth the time and energy just because I'm so busy. It's how do we take this, make the product better, reduce the risk involved, have a very happy consumer, and how do we do it over and over and over? So the bottom line is I focus on risk now, how to minimize the risk.
I think you have to have a passion a lot of times for what you do. The reason I was successful with my music store, I had a passion. I was a musician, and we used to have concerts out in front of the store and the weekends and stuff. And I had a passion for the furniture business. I've been for music business. I have a passion for the furniture business. I get to travel a lot. I do most of the buying. I get travel. I travel in over 50 countries, and it's fun. And it's really furniture business is really an entrepreneurial business. There's very few restrictions. If you're entrepreneurial, like say, and I learned at an early stage, you don't have to depend on franchises like Lazy Boy or Ethan L. and that. You can go out, and we buy from 400 different factories throughout the world. We buy from 30 countries, and that makes it fun to really be an entrepreneur. And you have to like what you're doing. If you like what you're doing, if you don't like what you're doing, you should change, because you won't work that extra hours, you won't have the passion for the business. And as a note on that, there's probably no demand for more furniture stores in Colorado right now.
Yeah, IKEA, stay out. Something important that Troy mentioned is about the money when you're young. It's all about the money. I know where your eyes are. I know what thirst you have for that because you haven't had it. Here's the problem, is being an employee and working for one of these big companies is very tempting because you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to see that $80,000 salary. You're going to be like, I need to go work there. But the problem is you're taking a short-term gain. If you go the path of an entrepreneur, you're not going to make as much for the first 4 or 5 years, I'd say. You're probably going to be scraping by while your friends who took the corporate gig are driving the Mercedes or something. This is the way it was when I was out of college. But guess what? Today, the people who started their own businesses are in a much better place than those of us who went to work for the man. So just something to think about, just the perspective of a long view versus a short view.
And with that, there's plenty of people who are working and they're almost being educated on the job about the product or their passion, and they're working with their owner and they're saying, okay, I'm passionate about this. I know how to make the product better. I can serve the customer better, and they go off and start their own. They compete with their current employer. We've had several people in our firm that have been trained with us, and they kind of grow and launch on their own, and they're friendly competitors to us. I hope they do it in an honest and ethical way. But so don't think that you have to go start your business from scratch. You can learn at someone else's expense too.
Yeah, you emulate to learn, and then you innovate to earn. So at some point, when you see that innovation, in fact, Brian Mitcher's here, he's in my book, and he has a great story about how he took this business plan on how to improve the business for his employer. His employer looked at the business plan and he said, you don't know what you're talking about, kid, get out of here, and he basically chucked the business plan. And Brian said, you know what, screw you, I'm going to go do this own thing, and he retired before he was 30. So at some point, if you bring these great ideas to whomever you're working for and they throw them away, then this is your golden opportunity. And it's almost that the more people who tell you, and confirm this for me if it's true, the more you hear the idea you've got is completely far-fetched and that it won't work, is that an indication that it might be something worth pursuing? I mean, some of your advertising, for example, on the Tigers, right? This is something people are like, why would you ever do that? But it's become a staple for you, right?
Tigers? What Tigers? What are you talking about, Tigers?
So anyway, all right, another question. Back in the middle.
My question is about competition, and it's geared towards Jack's here. IKEA announced about 3 years ago that they're moving into Colorado, and it's a California-based company that makes their products in Germany, and it's a furniture warehouse store. And it's kind of, my question is basically, how do you deal with competition like that coming into Colorado, and how do you prepare for that?
First place, I don't think IKEA is any competition, and the reason I say that is I've traveled a lot. Our first mega store was our store in Aurora, and I flew around the country and shopped some IKEA stores because, again, they are very successful. And by the way, copy people that are successful. And I've always kind of copied IKEA, Walmart, Costco, people that are successful. And one way to do that is travel around and look at their operations. So I did that with IKEA. What IKEA does is they have a niche. They sell a lot of pots and pans and a lot of things. They don't sell a lot of furniture, and frankly, we are way cheaper than IKEA's on furniture. So I don't really think they're competition. By the way, competition is good though. Nothing wrong with competition. Competition makes you better. Makes us better buyers. Makes us shop harder. Looks for more value. And I invite competition. Back a few years back, when there was a lot of furniture stores in Colorado, as you know, there's a ton of them went out of business here. You know, a lot of the big ones, Levitt's, Weberg's, Rhodes, Krause's, on and on. The list goes on and on. Furniture stores. We actually were doing better when all those stores were in town. Our business was growing 10 to 20% every year. When a lot of those stores left, we didn't start growing as much. So because it made us sharper, better advertisers. Give more value to the consumer. So nothing wrong with competition. So I invite IKEA to come in.
Good question, though. Yes?
As far as advertising goes, you mentioned that it's kind of been tough. Have you found any ways to be entrepreneurial as far as advertising goes?
Number one is word of mouth. I'll tell you right now, I think anybody starting in business, if you don't have word of mouth, you're not going to make it, because advertising is so tough today. And the way you have word of mouth advertising is give value to the consumer, be honest, and have them recommend you. If you don't have people recommending, I think right now, if you went out on the street and said, where should you buy your furniture? I think most people would say American Furniture Warehouse. And you need that to succeed today, because I think one reason that we've actually been able to make money and still sell furniture cheap is my advertising budget's always been low. Historically, the advertising budget, in business you normally budget advertising to sales. And in furniture business, historically, it's been around 7-8% of your sales to advertising. I've always budgeted 3%. So that difference between, say, 8% and 3% is 5%. So if I can net out 5% at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy. And I think the reason that I can get by with only budgeting 3% to advertising is, maybe the animals have a little bit of something to do with that.
Commercials, that's part of it.
Yeah, and I do my own commercials. But also it's that word of mouth that we have going for us, and that just saves you that money. Instead of working for the TV station or radio stations or newspapers, you can actually, that money goes to the bottom line. So keep that in mind. Like I said earlier, you got to have something that, a demand that people want, and then have that passion to be the best, and if you're the best, people will come to you.
And yeah, if you're doing it for the money, the problem is the person who has the passion is going to beat you every time, because they're going to stay later. That goes back to Doug Odell. The reason he wants to hire people who have a passion for brewing is because they're going to stay past 5 o'clock, and they're going to come in on the weekends when they have to. If they're coming because of the paycheck, he knows they're not going to be able to need to be. A question on the way back.
This question is for Jake. How has your business model evolved over time, and how does it change? How do operations change during times of a recession?
I think the first thing is right after that big recession of '80, in the middle '80s, where we really were broke. I made up my mind then is that I wasn't going to be in debt to banks. In fact, at that time I owed the bank $1 million, and they were ready to foreclose on me. And I ran that half-price sale, and I paid the bank off. I was slow-paying creditors. And by the way, keep credit good, because if you have good credit, that opens doors. And I've always had really good credit. There was a couple of years there when I slid a little bit, but if you have good credit, it opens doors. So my business model, particularly after then, was to pay cash for everything, don't go in debt, live below your means. How many of you are living below your means? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Same ones reading the papers.
6 out of this crowd is living below their means. Living below your means, you spend less money than you take in. And if you live below your means, and don't become indebted to banks, because banks, by the way, can get awful mean real quick. I'm sure, as you know, if you don't pay them, they want to grab your assets and foreclose on you. So I stayed out of debt. And the other thing is, by being cash liquid, is you get better buys. Factories will ship you better. They'll give you better buys. If they got a good deal, they'll come to you first because they know they'll get paid. And so that's the way I think my business model changed, was to try to stay in a good cash position and just get good buys for the consumer.
question for you, Jake. How is the website of your e-commerce operation going? Increasing sales? Is it taking your place? Newspaper advertising? Where are we going with the internet?
Yeah, right now we're doing everything we can. We got a great website, by the way, and I've spent quite a bit of money developing a great website because that is a growing part of the business. And we're actually selling the stuff really all over the country because of a great website. We probably have the best website in the furniture industry. And again, if you have the best, whatever, the best website, best delivery, people come to you. We're doing right now over $5 million a year on our website sales. And that's pretty profitable because you don't have the salesmen and everything else. Also, we're doing emails. And probably right now, the most efficient thing we're doing is emails. Because emails are free. And we all ask all our customers to give us their email. And right now, we're promoting our pre-Christmas sale. We'll send them an email and have some kind of caveat in the email. So emails are cheap, and it's a good way to, and you're targeting the right people. You're targeting your customer, you know.
And where they're looking, because they look at the computer, they don't look at the TV now.
Yeah,
right.
That's
where they're at.
Yeah. So it's all of those type of things. All of the e-commerce. I got people looking at Twitters and blogs and all that stuff, and we're doing quite a bit of that again because that's all free. So I think today you have to really be active in all of that stuff, and it's cheap. It's cheap, so and you can accomplish a lot where TVs want dollars.
The last two purchases I made in the last week have been on Facebook ads. Okay, I bought actually my wife. What was it? It was a new product. We actually went to the store and found it. Anyway. The other one was John Mayer tickets, which you could buy early if you know about them through Facebook. So I think that social advertising on the internet is paying much greater dividends for advertisers today than traditional media and that's why the traditional media is somewhat going down the drains because they depend on that. Before we go on, Troy, how are you guys using the web? How are you using the web effectively in your business?
We've got a pretty good marketing group that it was interesting. We did some concerts at Centera last summer. And our marketing group is a lot younger than we are. And they came out and said, we need to advertise on MySpace and Facebook and all that stuff. And at the concerts, we went around and asked how many people, or how did you learn about the concerts at Centera? And a very good portion of the population attended said, they referred to the website, Facebook pages, etc. So, a lot of our business is dealing with larger companies who want to locate here. The website has to be very important. A lot of companies may be based in Canada or somewhere else, and when the CEO goes back and tells his employees, hey, we're going to open an office here, any of you want to move there, first thing they do and their family do is get on the websites and see what's happening out there. So.
And it's a branding and being real, not being fragmented in your approach. I think a lot of businesses struggle because they don't truly have a core identity, right? And you guys are in businesses that very clearly, when people know who you are and what you do, because you have very strong branding. And that doesn't come easy, right? You guys work very hard.
It takes a long time to get there, too. It doesn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah, and if you started chasing all these different things away from your core business, people would be very confused as far as what you do. Kind of like IKEA. I think the confusion with IKEA is it's not a furniture store. Yeah. You walk into one, and most people walk out with things other than furniture. So you think it's somebody that competes with Jake, but the truth is it doesn't, because they're not really a furniture store. So they've got a branding issue in my mind, a little bit. So, sorry, another question?
Jake, I've always wondered, please don't misinterpret this because I don't mean it to be a rude question, but American Furniture used to have all American furniture, and then it slowly tapered off over time. The last time I was in American Furniture, there's very few pieces from American artisans and things like that. So just curious about how you embrace the culture of those communities that your stores are in to bring in local artisans, local couch makers, or local furniture makers, and how you sell their wares in your stores, or if you do.
Well, first of all, 60% of what we buy is made in America, and I'll buy American every time. Trust me, I believe I've had my own factory for 37 years, and but the reality is this: if you're not importing, you're out of business. Like the stuff we particularly ads, I handle the advertising. I go to advertising every day. We pick the items, and the item, if you'll pick up our ad, say for this weekend, about 80 or 90% of the stuff that's in the ad will be imports. And the reason for that is that's where the buys are. You have to buy, I think Walmart and everybody started out, I remember when Walmart says buy America, I don't know if you can find anything in Walmart made in America anymore. And they didn't go to imports because, they went there because they had to. They had to go. And the reality is this, is the factories in America can't compete with the overseas, particularly in a lot of things like bedroom sets. I mean, you can buy a bedroom set. Let's say this table here, if this table was made in America, would probably sell for wholesale for $30, and the retailer would retail it for $50 or $60. If we went to Malaysia or China or Singapore like that and had it made, you could probably have it made for $15. So you could have this table for $15, you could retail it for $25. So what I'm saying is that the consumer sets the prices. Consumer says, I want to buy that item because it's a good price. And the consumer really don't care anymore whether it's made by Bassett or Ethan Allen or Thomasville. And in fact, how many of you ever heard of Thomasville here? How many of you heard of Thomasville? About 15 or 20. How many of you heard of Bassett? You see what I mean? And Bassett for years was the biggest in the country. They were number one, and yet the younger generation never really heard of Bassett. So you build your own brand, actually, what you're doing. American Furniture is the brand because we set the value. And as a buyer, I have the choice a lot of times. And I'll buy American every time for a lot of reasons. One is they ship better. I can control I don't have to wait 90 days for the container coming in from overseas and that type of thing. But the reality is a lot of times you have to import because that's where the value is.
But don't you think that that's a value standpoint that as somebody who's in the furniture business, as an American Furniture, American is in your name. So if 40% of your products aren't domestic, then in your advertising, shouldn't we be saying there's a reason that our products are more expensive, and it's because it comes from home. And there's a reason why we don't import this cheap stuff, because it's not what we do.
Well, I don't think consumers are really interested. You're talking about politics there. I mean, that's...
it's not about politics. It's about...
Well, Nick, what you didn't hear because you came in late is that the reason he's in business today is because people buy cheap furniture. If he did not have the prices set, he'd be out of business today. This is what he discovered when he marked his furniture half off. All of a sudden, people started coming out of the woodwork.
That's right. Yeah, the consumer sets the price. I don't, and the consumer sets where it comes from. I mean, look at your shirt. Where's your shirt made?
This shirt was actually made in Hawaii. So.
In where?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. So, but I don't think you'll find two pieces of clothes in this whole room that's made in the U.S. And the reason that we buy clothes made in everywhere from Haiti to all over the world, Malaysia or wherever, is because the value is there. It would be because you know that cars should be had. We all have paid twice too much for cars, guys. And the reason I know this is I've been going to China and Malaysia and Singapore and those places, India, where they're making cars, and they can build a car for less than half of what we can. And once we fill that pipeline and they start importing, India starts exporting cars. Just think if you guys could all buy a car for half of what you're paying now. Wouldn't that be something? And that's going to happen. That's going to happen because China's catching up now. Right now they've got about 100 car factories in China now. And once they fill that internal demand, they'll start exporting to the U.S. And I've been there and done it. I rode in these cars that they're building over there. And you take a car like, say, a Camry, Toyota, or a Malibu Chevy or something that's around $22,000. You could buy that car in India or China for $8,000. Now look at the money you save. Now, as a consumer, where would you buy the car? And by the way, they're better. They're better. They're built better. They last longer. And they're a better car than they made in America. And by the way, that's true with so many things that are made overseas. It's better. There's kind of a misconception out there. I think it comes from years ago when Japan was one of the first companies. They thought, well, the stuff they make in Japan is junk. Hey, the stuff made in Japan is not junk anymore. The same thing has happened in China. The stuff made in China is not junk anymore. It's made actually better than it's made in America. So as a retailer, I don't care what business you go into, but you probably got to think about importing to be competitive in the marketplace.
Good. Alan.
Guys, can you both talk to the significance of hiring the right people as you scale from being founders to managers to owners?
That's a good question. So how do you hire the right people?
We got to a point, we started in 1994, and what is it now, 2009, probably about halfway through, so early 2000s, work got to be where it wasn't fun. We grew, had a lot of employees or associates, and I was spending a lot of my time doing HR stuff, legal work, and I wasn't doing what I was passionate about, and it actually got to be where it wasn't fun. And went through some executive coaching, had some executives, mentors come in and talk to us, and we realized that we were hiring a lot of people that were like us. And we realized that there were so many people out there that love accounting. They love legal. They love human resources. They love insurance. They love just all kinds of stuff. And when we read a book called Strengths Finders, and I was amazed. I said, "You actually like doing this stuff?" And they said, "Yes." And they hate doing the stuff I do. They hate going out and doing business and deals. Once I learned that secret, it's easy. And so hiring the right people, when we used to hire someone, we would tell our friends and family, "Hey, if you know anyone who wants a job, give us a call." And we kind of hire the person that we liked, that we enjoyed working with. Now whenever we hire someone, we might go through a national search on monster.com, get in 100 or 200 resumes, and I mean, hiring the right person is so valuable than having to go over turnover and finding someone who's passionate, who loves their work. So
I'm glad you brought that up. And by the way I got connected through Jake, and I don't know if you remember this, so Christine, our friend, he worked for you. And she said he was one of the greatest guys to work for. And then we talked to other people when we were the next time at the American Furniture Warehouse, we were asking about how it is to work here. And the fact is they like working for Jake because he treats people extremely well. So I'm glad that the question came up, because how do you find the right people, Alan? I think a lot of it is how you retain those people despite the money, right? Because you're probably not paying them top dollar. Maybe you are.
Well, we pay better than most retailers, really.
Okay.
Our starting salary, for example, is $12 an hour, just for a starting basic salary. Yeah.
But maybe,
I've always believed in paying a little better because you get better employees.
But any other tips around basically building your business, because it is the people that you surround yourself with that define the success of your company. Is that correct?
Yeah. A couple of philosophies I have. By the way, I don't do the hiring, obviously, and I'm like you. I mean, I hire the wrong people. I hire my friends. You don't want to hire your friends and your family because they feel like they can go home early and all that stuff. So I have other people that do that. But I think one thing that we retain people is when I first started in business, I used to have a lot, particularly for sales, they had rewards, had the top salesman, had a president's club, and we'd give them trips to Vegas, and take them to dinner, and have an entertainment for them. And as the years progressed, I finally decided one day that you were actually playing favorites with certain people, maybe because you liked them better, or the top salesman was always overselling, and you had to fire him because he was overselling. And little by little, I did away with all that. So we don't have any sort of spiff program for anybody anymore. And you know what? The employees like it because you're treating everybody the same. You're treating them fair. And I always tell my new employees, I spend all day, every time I have a new employee about once a month, and right now we're hiring about 30 or 40 people a month because our business has picked up a little bit. And I spend all day with the new employees. And one thing I say is we're not going to give you a hard time, we're not going to give you awards, and we're going to leave you alone. If you're doing a good job, we're going to leave you alone. If you're doing something wrong, then we'll probably review you. And people like that idea that you just leave alone, let them do their job without any pressure. And I think that's one reason we don't have turnover.
Yeah, there are some really misguided business philosophies out there that some of these companies who found success are still living by. And there's books out there like Tom Peters' In Search of Excellence. And there's a couple topic points that he makes in that book that are completely out of any pointless mentality of why somebody would do that. One of them, for example, is acknowledging people's successes in public. Okay, so you think that somebody does really well, so you want to basically put them up and he's the salesperson of the year. You have a big convention and you bring everybody up. That makes him feel good, but how do you think it makes everyone else in that room feel?
Yeah.
It makes them feel like crap. So you're rewarding one person and everybody else is feeling crap and really demotivated. The biggest joke is the IBM sales conferences I went to, I dreaded going to. Because I always walked away from those feeling much worse about myself and the company that I was working for than when I arrived. Because what they did is they had this winner's circle. And they're like, we want you to be more like this guy. He sold $1 million worth of product last year. And they put him up on a pedestal, and everyone else, you know, I worked my butt off, but I never got acknowledged. I got acknowledged once. And that's something in Tom Peters, in Search of Excellence, he talks about. He says, oh, you should promote in public. But you know what? That, to me, is a completely false way of running your business.
I have no sales quotas for my salesmen. No quotas. If you're a salesman with American Furniture, and we have over 300 salesmen, there's no quotas. And so there's no pressure on them. And we have no goals. I've never had a goal for my company. I've never really had a goal in my life. I'm serious. I haven't. Everything just evolved, you know.
You're having fun.
So that's right. And I think by taking the pressure off of your employees by not having goals and quotas and anything, that they have more fun and they enjoy their working more.
Joy, do you have anything to add? Because we'll probably have one more question. Unless maybe
not on that one.
No. Yes.
When opportunity knocks, how do you react to it? What do? Do you like answer right away, or do you think about it? Do you write about it? Like you that have family involved, what do you do?
How do you take action? Is that your question? How do you take very swift action? Like you don't hesitate. And I think I'll let you answer.
About action on what? On family, you say, or employees, or?
No, an opportunity. So say, you know, the fact a lot of opportunities will be gone unless you act quick, right?
Yeah.
And is there a technique or trick that you use to act quick?
Experience. I can make unbelievable decisions every day because I've had the experience over the years how to do it. But also, you know, take some chances. You know, when I paid that $1,500 for a half-empty music store, that was all the money I had. I put every penny into it as a risk. When I bought the Old American in 1975, I put every penny. In fact, because I actually went broke in buying it, you take risks. So sometimes I think if you take risks, that you'll be more successful because you took a risk. If you go broke, I always figured if I went broke, I could go back teaching guitar, I could go back to the farm, I could teach school, which is what I graduated in college. So encourage you to get education because I think it gives you the confidence to go out and do something else, and you can always fall back on your education to cover you. So don't be afraid to take risks.
Joy?
Yeah, opportunity. I've gotten to a point now, there's so much opportunity out there, and I've learned to see it and spot it early. You know, I would encourage you, not everyone has to own their own business. You talked about a salesman being an entrepreneur. I know a lot of real estate brokers who work for the group real estate, Northern Colorado's largest, make a lot of money. They kind of pick their own hours. You don't have to go open up your own business per se and have a bunch of employees and take on overhead and a lot of the stress that comes with it. I know a lot of people who kind of are their own boss, working small overhead and making a lot of money with a lot of free time, and they love what they do. So don't leave here thinking you have to go start a company with 50 employees or thousands of employees to be successful.
The key to overcoming risk, I discovered this. I interviewed Bob Parsons from GoDaddy because he articulated it better than anyone else. So the key to overcoming any risk in your life, and this is really the fear of the outcome that you think will occur by you making this decision, is that you first have to fully accept the potential outcome that this decision you're about to make may result in. I can assure you that your mind will create a much worse scenario than will likely ever occur. But if you can fully sit with the reality of the outcome, then that risk will no longer hold you back. But if you can't sit and you can't live with yourself after the potential outcome, then you know what? You're never going to take the risk. So you have to sort of be willing to accept. I mean, when I quit my job and started putting a lot of money into this business, I had to fully accept the fact that I could lose a lot of money and risk our house and really get into a very uncomfortable situation in my marriage because, of course, you're not bringing in the income. But you know what? I was okay with that because 50 interviews to me was so important. It was that purpose greater than yourself. It goes back to finding purpose greater than yourself because if you don't, you're never going to take the risk because it's all about you. Because you're the one, your ego is going to be the one that's going to defend itself and not take those risks. But when you find that purpose greater than yourself, Mother Teresa is probably the person that defined the greatest, right? She risked her life because she found a purpose greater than herself worth living for. So, I mean, if you can find a purpose that great, I'm telling you, you will make miracles in the world. So that's one key to overcoming one way that I overcome risk and take action. One more question, because I didn't see. No, sorry. No. Can you all come up with one question?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you do any feasibility analysis research before taking on a project, and how does the outcome of that analysis determine how you go forward?
For us, a lot of people in the business do reports and studies. They're always wrong. So people do it, I believe, to cover their ass, if you will. So if they make a mistake, they can blame it on the consultant. We do them. I hate doing them, just because everyone else does them. The banks want to see them. Everyone wants to see them. I've gotten to a point now where I just my own judgment is
It feels right.
It feels right. Kind of do 80% of the research and go with your gut.
Experience tells you that, right? And you're usually right. That's a brilliant one, Jake.
Yeah. When I first started in business, I went to a lot of seminars and things like that because I didn't know business. I don't come from a business background. I went to these rah. I quit going to those because it seemed like they had more bad information than they did good information. And yeah, right now I just do it off the top of my head, and most of my decisions are right. And we don't really use any consultants or advertising agencies or anything like that. But that comes with the experience and knowing that, hey, the decision I make is probably going to be the right decision.
My favorite quote, in fact, it made the front cover of my book, is from Michael Gerber, who wrote a book called E-Myth. If you guys don't know about it and you want to become an entrepreneur, it's one of the best books out there. It isn't what you know, but what you're determined to do that makes the difference. Knowing actually gets in the way. And let me give you an example. This book cost me about $20,000 to produce. If I had known that it was going to cost me $20,000 to produce, I would have never done it. But guess what? Now I'm producing these books for $5,000. But there's no way you can possibly know that until you've gone through it and you've made mistakes. So the more you know, the more you're going to come up with excuses not to take action. Just take action, fail. And the great thing about decisions is you can make another decision and keep making more and more decisions. You probably heard that.
One more thing. What I would say is before you do a book, go talk to 20 people who did books. Yeah, ask them how they did it cheaper.
Self-published authors would have been a much smarter first book. No, but thank you guys, and we'll be available. Derek, I'll let Derek up. But by the way, huge kudos to Derek and the Entrepreneur Club.
My name is Derek Hoffmeister. We handed out these for the Entrepreneurship Club. We are looking for new members, so if you're interested, email me. Our next meeting is going to be the Monday after Thanksgiving. And then also, if everyone could turn it to the back, we have Jake that signed the back of this, and then Brian that signed two of them. So if you have that, we'll give you some books here.